Kubernetes. I mean, so much buzz and hype, like the future of infrastructure, the OS of the cloud, one platform to rule them all. But believe me, it is worth the hype, because make no mistake, Kubernetes is the beating heart of cloud native, and it is the platform for today and tomorrow. Well, have we got a course for you? As the title suggests, Getting Started with Kubernetes is the ultimate course for, well, getting you started with Kubernetes. We start the ball rolling explaining what Kubernetes actually is, and as part of that, we demystify all of the jargon like microservices, cloud native, declarative configurations, you name it, we demystify it. Anyway, then we dive into Kubernetes architecture, so all the concepts of like desired state and reconciliation, but also the control plane services that make it all happen. After that, we see how to get Kubernetes, and then we're into the hands-on. Now, you can feel free to follow along in your own lab, or you can just watch. Either way, you are guaranteed to learn a ton. Anyway, we'll deploy an app, expose it to the internet, break it and watch Kubernetes self-heal it, scale it up and down, and perform a rolling update. And when we're done, oh my goodness, you will be well on your way to using Kubernetes in the real world. Well, I'm Nigel Poulton. I've been doing containers and Kubernetes since the beginning, and I am very excited to deliver this course. So, buckle up and get ready to learn Kubernetes. All right, getting started with Kubernetes. Trust me when I say this, you are at the start of something huge, like maybe career defining, and that's good, because the technology world is changing in some really positive ways, and Kubernetes, it is front and center. Now then, if you're totally new to this, like maybe you're not even sure what a container is, then you might want to hit this course first. Now, it's up to you, of course. It's just, in this course that we're doing right now, I am going to be assuming that you know what a container is and maybe how to spin one up. So, if that's not you, or I mean, not you yet, hit the pause button here, find this course, do it, and then jump back here when you're done. Okay, well, assuming you know what a container is, this is how we're about to do things. We'll do a quick what is Kubernetes, and it's going to be really important. Like, we'll cover important background info, but we'll also level set with a bunch of the jargon. Like, things like, what do we mean when we say cloud native and microservices and stuff like that. Okay, well, then we'll dive into Kubernetes architecture. Now, this is going to be a full-on theory module, but I promise you, it is going to be absolutely epic. Like, if you've taken any of my courses before, you'll know that I absolutely bust my gut making sure that theory is fun and entertaining so that it sticks. Well, look, the whole point of the theory is to lay the groundwork for all the hands-on that's coming later. So we'll start the ball rolling by looking at how to get Kubernetes. Just a couple of quick and easy ways so you can kick the tires and follow along with all of the examples. Well, after that, we'll be up and running. So we'll deploy an app. We'll expose it on a network. In fact, we'll hook it into a cloud load balancer for access from the internet. But then we'll break it and see Kubernetes fix it. We'll scale it up and down, and we'll do a rolling update and a version rollback, plus probably any other buzzwords I can think of. Actually, on the topic of buzzwords, I am well aware that the tech world is littered with them, and I hate it when people throw them around and just assume everyone knows what they're talking about. So anytime we hit a buzzword, you'll be getting crystal clear explanations. And if I forget to do one, or if my explanations aren't so good, call me out and I'll see if I can fix it. Well, last but not least, we'll wrap the course with a few ideas of what you can do next. Now, some very quick housekeeping. All the code and the examples that we'll be using are in the course's GitHub repo here. However, if you're not an expert on GitHub, join the club. I'm not either. And that's not going to be a problem, because all we're going to be using it for is to download the course files. That's it. And even to do that, I'll show you the commands. But yeah, I reckon that's it. Now, this is me on the socials. Feel free to connect, and if you get stuck, give me a shout and I'll see if I can help. But come on, let's rock and roll. Alright, so what even is Kubernetes? And I'm splitting this into two. We'll start out with I guess the DNA? I don't know if that works, but it means things like where did Kubernetes come from and what does the name mean and stuff like that. And no, it's not the actual fun technical detail, but it is important, so stick with me. Anyway, when we're done with all of that, we'll talk about what Kubernetes actually does and why we have it. So, first up, Kubernetes came out of Google, and I think if I remember right, way back in 2014, it was open sourced and donated to the newly minted Cloud Native Computing Foundation as its very first project. Well, since then, it's been nothing short of a meteoric rise to the top. Love it or hate it, there's no doubt that Kubernetes is one of the biggest and most important open source technologies on the planet. I don't know, it's burning so hot and its future is so bright, if you stare at it for too long, you're going to damage your eyes. I don't know. Yeah, look, it lives on GitHub at Kubernetes/Kubernetes, and like a bunch of the infrastructure projects out there, it's written in Go. So, if you're hands-on with Go code, it'd be really cool if you got involved. In fact, you know what? Even if you're not a developer, maybe you can help with the docs or something. We always need people to help. It's got active channels on all of the messaging platforms like Slack and Discord, and there's conferences and meetups all over the planet. Alright, well, there's a chance you'll hear people talk about how it relates to Google's Borg and Omega systems. So, what's the crack with that? Well, it's no secret that Google's been rocking its own infrastructure on containers for years. Like stories of Google churning through billions of containers a week running things like Search and Gmail. And yeah, you did hear that right. That was billions with a B. Well, pulling the strings at Google and keeping those billions of containers in check were a couple of in-house projects called Borg and Omega. So, it's not a huge stretch to make the connection. I mean, after all, Kubernetes is also about managing containers at scale. However, and I want to be clear about this, Kubernetes is not an open source version of either of those. It's more like, it's more like it shares a bunch of its DNA and family history with those. So, in the beginning was Borg and Borg became Omega, or it spawned the idea or genesis of Omega. Anyway, they both led to the idea of Kubernetes. But the three of them are separate systems. So Kubernetes absolutely was built from scratch from the ground up. It just leveraged a ton of stuff learned from Borg and Omega. Oh, and of course, a bunch of the people that built Borg and Omega also built Kubernetes. Anyway, what else? We've got that it came out of Google, got a bunch of its DNA from Borg and Omega, open sourced under the Apache 2.0 license, version 1. Oh wow. This shipped way back in July 2015, so it's already 8 years old. So, even though it might feel super new and bleeding edge at times, and it is, I get it, but it's actually quite mature. I mean, 8 years old. Wow. Oh, yeah. The name, Kubernetes, doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. Well, not like Borg and Omega, but it's rich in meaning. So, the word Kubernetes, and that's how we generally pronounce it, okay? Well, it comes from the Greek word meaning helmsman. Now, that's the person steering an ocean-faring ship. And then the logo here, obviously, that's from the helm of a ship, which all kind of makes sense when you realize the container ecosystem is obsessed with ocean-related jargon. Oh, now then, and I love this. Way back in the early days, Kubernetes was provisionally named 7 of 9, which, if you know your Star Trek, you'll know that 7 of 9 is a rescued Borg drone. So, link to Google's Borg, yeah? Well, as you'd probably expect, copyright laws wouldn't let them call it 7 of 9, but the 7 spokes in the logo are a tip of the hat to 7 of 9, which I think is a pretty nice touch. Anyway, the last thing I'll say before moving on is that you'll often see Kubernetes shortened to this, K8s, which we normally pronounce as Kates. The idea being that the number 8 here replaces the 8 characters between the leading K and the trailing S. And yeah, that's it. Now, I know some of this might feel a bit like waffle and you might be wondering, do you really need to know this? But like I said at the start, I really think you do. Like, there are no Kubernetes experts out there that don't know this stuff. That all said though, there's no point knowing this stuff if we don't know the more important technical stuff as well. So, next up, what actually is Kubernetes and what does it do? Okay, so what is Kubernetes and why the heck do we have it? Now, like I said in the intro, I am assuming that you know a bit about containers. If you don't, I highly recommend these 2 courses. They'll get you all clued up on the basics and the hands-on. Now, I'm also assuming you've got an idea of some of the challenges containers bring, as well as maybe some of the impacts that they're having on how we think about infrastructure. So, generally speaking, containers make our old scalability challenges seem a bit laughable, and that's putting it mildly. We've already talked about Google's billions of containers. But yeah, I get it, I'll hold my hand up straight away. Google is Google, and the vast majority of the rest of us are about as much like Google as I'm like, I don't know, Cristiano Ronaldo on a football pitch. So not even remotely similar. However, if your legacy apps had tens or hundreds of VMs, there is a solid chance your modern microservices apps are going to have thousands of containers. And if that is the case, I can tell you now, you need some help managing them. Well, say hello to Kubernetes. Another thing I want to mention is that we've kind of abandoned the traditional view of the cloud and the data center as a collection of individual computers. We're more in favor these days of the more powerful idea that the cloud or the data center is the computer, like a giant one. So if we look at a computer, and I'm keeping it high level, right, but it's got processors, memory, persistent storage, networking, and for the most part, application developers aren't bothered about which CPU core or memory DIMM their apps are running on. We leave all of that up to the operating system. And you know what? It works a treat. In fact, the world of application development thrives on it. So, it's only natural to take this to the next level and treat the cloud and the data center the same. So, instead of caring about the exact VM or compute instance to run stuff on, just leave all that up to some kind of cloud OS or OS of the cloud. Well, say another hello to Kubernetes. So, we can basically say, hey Kubernetes, I've got this app and it consists of these different services. Any chance you could just run it for me, please? And you know what? It does. Kubernetes goes off and does the hard stuff for us. Now then, if you like analogies, it's a bit like sending packages via a courier service where we package up whatever we're sending, obviously according to the courier's packaging instructions, and then we slap a label on it and we give it to the courier. And that is us, done. All the decisions of which routes to use or routes to use, which planes to use, which motorways or highways, all of that is outsourced to the courier. So it's kind of the same with Kubernetes. We package apps as containers, describe them in a declarative manifest file, and then we just give them to Kubernetes. Then of course behind the scenes, Kubernetes does all the work of deciding which nodes to run them on, how to, pull and verify images, start the containers attached to networks, all of that complexity, Kubernetes just takes care of it. And as we will eventually see, it genuinely is a beautiful thing. Now, we're super high level right now, but yeah, Kubernetes is the de facto platform for managing containerized applications at scale, what we call cloud-native microservices apps. And on that note, we love a good buzzword in the industry, so next up, we're going to define exactly what we mean when we say things like cloud-native and microservices. Okay, so this is going to be quick. Back in the day, like before the grey hairs in my beard, we built applications as monoliths. In fact, that's what gave me the grey hairs. Anyway, monolith is jargon for a massive honking application with all the features and functionality bundled into a single giant program. And to be honest, it was a nightmare. Like, if you needed to patch just a tiny part of the app, you had to actually take the whole thing down. Like, there was no way to just patch or update a part of it. But you know what? It was the same for scaling. You couldn't scale individual parts. So, like if it was year-end and the reporting system was being hammered, you couldn't just scale reporting. Oh no, you had to scale the whole thing. So, like I said, proper nightmare. No sweat though, they are becoming an ancient relic and we're replacing them with cloud-native microservices apps. And actually, let me flip that jargon around and I'm going to mention the microservices bit first. So that old monolithic app did a bunch of different things. Like, I don't know, reporting, logging, authentication, inventory, you name it. But it was all built as a single app, which, like we said, meant it had to be shipped and managed as a single unit. Well, each of these different features are kind of like services. So the big old honking monolith, it had a reporting service, a logging service, authentication service, the whole picnic. Well, the microservices pattern takes this exact same set of small services and it breaks each one into its own mini application, hence the term microservices. But on the technical side, what it means is we can now manage all of them independently. So let's say we need to patch the reporting service. No sweat. We can now do that without having to take everything else down. And like, what did we say if it's year end again and reporting is being battered? All good. Just scale up only the reporting bits of the app. Alright, well, the most common pattern is to run each of these microservices as their own containers. So, a container for reporting, a container for authentication, a container for the web front end, and all the rest. Then, if we're scaling reporting, we just add more reporting containers. Then, obviously, when year end's done, we scale it back by removing the extra containers. The point is, though, the overall app looks and feels the same, so users and consumers, they don't know whether it's microservices or monolithic, they just consume it in the same way and get the same results. It's just that behind the scenes, it can all be managed way easier. Well, that's the microservices part. The cloud native bit, this means it's all scalable, dynamic, loosely coupled via APIs, and importantly, it can run anywhere we've got Kubernetes. Now, I always stress this. Cloud native does not mean an app that only runs in public clouds. In fact, I think a core tenet of a cloud native app is this ability to run anywhere you've got Kubernetes. I mean, and obviously, yeah, that can be the public cloud, but it can just as easily be a private cloud or even on premises. The point is, microservices is breaking out the different parts of a big app into smaller pieces that all talk over a network and give the overall same application experience. Then the cloud native bit is the benefits that this microservices architecture enables. So, the granular scalability, the zero impact rolling updates, even things like self-healing that we'll see later, these are all the cloud native bits. Now then, look, if that still feels a bit unclear or you're like, what is this guy on about? Trust me, stick around because I promise you, by the end of the course, you'll be like, oh yeah, now I get it. Well, time for a quick disclaimer. Kubernetes and the cloud is moving fast, so it's super important you keep up to date. But I promise, Kubernetes is a skill that is going to pay you huge dividends in the future. So, next up, oh yeah, this is where the real learning starts. Next up, we're diving into Kubernetes architecture, and you're gonna love it.